Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Legal Unicorns. Today, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Colin Levy to the show. It's a man that I've been following myself, and most of my colleagues have been following, and I know many of you that are listening follow on the socials for a very long time. Always sends out a nice message at the week, just before the weekend or at the weekend, to say have a great weekend and or happy Friday. I've seen a few of those posts as well. He's a wonderful uh, legal professional, author, speaker, and legal tech. I don't use the word lightly, but guru in my eyes. Someone I follow very, very closely in terms of what's going on out there. And I'll get to the introduction now, and I'll just introduce Colin, and then we've got a whole heap of questions, many of which have come from my colleagues as well. So Colin is a lawyer, he's an author, speaker, a legal technology evangelist whose career lives at the intersection of business, technology, and the law. His legal practices spanned e-discovery, corporate compliance, corporate transactions, and all the work in legal departments across a variety of industries, including technology. Colin currently serves as a director of legal and evangelist for Malbec, a leading contract lifecycle management company. I hope I've pronounced that right. Uh, After acquiring an insider's view of the good and the bad and the ugly of the legal industry's use of technology, Colin started to write and publish his observations. Now, you've just released a book, which we will talk about more in the interview, but it's called The Legal Tech Ecosystem, Innovation, Advancement, and the Future of Law Practice, which is one of the big reasons I've asked you to come on, and thankfully you did. This led to a career helping legal and administrative professionals identify issues in their current systems and processes, and I guess improve the all-round delivery of legal services. Outside of your advisory work and role at Malbec, Colin remains a sought-after speaker and writer on burgeoning issues in the legal technology vertical, again, which is why we're absolutely delighted to have you on. His work has been featured in numerous media outlets, including Above the Law, which is a fantastic online publication if no one listeners haven't heard of it before, and Bloomberg Law, and your website has been named among the top 30 legal sites in the US, and you can see the link below. And you live outside the wonderful city of Boston with your husband and two cats. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, look, as I said before, it's been tough to get the diaries to align, and I really thank you for your patience. Before we get into you and your background and what sort of led you to where you are now, we've got lots and lots of questions on legal tech as well to ask you later on in the interview. But one of the reasons why I reached out to you really was, and as we sort of said off camera shortly, a short while ago, is legal tech, or the technology within law is moving. I mean, this is probably the most obvious statement anyone could ever make, but it's moving at such a rapid pace, and as technology tends to do. But obviously, we're talking about an industry that was slow to move and slow to change. And that's not just in the US where you are, but in Africa and Asia and Europe where I've worked as well. And now we're seeing it's like lightning. And I thought, right, wouldn't it be great for our audience, which is largely in Africa, is largely legal professionals who often talk to us and talk to me and look out for what's happening next, where should they go with their careers, their businesses, whatever it may be. And I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong, but certainly historically, a lot of things start in the US. The US leads the way in many, many industries, and there's no reason to think that this is any different. And there's a lot of things going on. I follow your updates, but obviously many others as well. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to get someone on who's at the forefront of that industry, and then so we can maybe even plan ahead over here. So I'm absolutely delighted to have you on to talk all things legal tech. But firstly, I really want to get to know a little bit about you. So if you don't mind, where did you, many years ago, well, not maybe not that many, I don't want to put years on you, but where were you born? Where did you grow up? And how did you progress through life into the law?
Sure. Well, I was born in Boston. Thankfully, was not um, given the Boston accent, which would have been not so great. And so I've grown up kind of in in the Northeast where, we've got different seasons and all of that. And my relationship with technology has been sort of a love hate relationship, at least initially, and that I feared some of it. It struck me earlier in life as fairly kind of dense and math heavy and coding heavy, and I wasn't really into all of that for a while. But I did recognize technology's growing impact upon life in general and business, and slowly but surely grew interested in learning more about those impacts. And I think that was reinforced when I, many years later, was working in New York for a law firm as a paralegal, doing e-discovery work, and saw the use of technology in sort of delivery of legal services, and thought, that's kind of interesting. I go to law school. There was very little talk of technology, and I thought that was kind of a little bit odd, considering I had just come from an environment where technology was being heavily used by legal professionals and being relied upon by lawyers. And so, upon graduating, I thought, it would make sense to learn more about it, because I thought I can't be the only one who thinks that this is strange. So that prompted me to start reaching out to folks who were either teaching about technology and its impact upon the law, or themselves had started companies that were creating products for legal professionals or lawyers. And as I started learning about these different efforts and having these conversations, I then decided to kind of start sharing my own thoughts about the space. And as I started to share more, I started to learn more, I started to make more connections with people. And that really was kind of the foundation that set me off on the journey that I've had since, into the world of legal tech.
Yeah, I think there was something you just said in the middle of that that really, I think, will resonate with a lot of people on this continent as well. And again, I'm going to hold my hands up and say I don't know the content of every single law school across Africa. That would be crazy to claim. But one of the things that we hear a lot is that and you sort of alluded to it there, is that the there's the distance, I suppose, between what you learn at law school about the principles of the law and then the business of law, and how so vast apart they are quite often. I mean, we certainly hear it a lot here in South Africa, which have phenomenal law schools, but always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, are they setting these students up necessarily to be able to get into the world of work? And that was before the advent of technology. So obviously you were then driven to step into that more so from what you learn on the ground working in New York as opposed to in law school, I guess.
Yeah, I think that I learned a lot about myself, working in New York, and I think that that experience sort of sparked my interest in tech and its impact upon law. But I really, most of that learning took place through the conversations I had, because it was just really interesting to me to hear others' journeys, how they started off, what prompted them to begin their journeys, and so on. And that really resonated with me because, as I think folks who follow me know, I tend to take sort of a human centric approach to uh, writing and thinking about technology and the practice and business of law. And that, I think, is really what it comes down to, is that technology is a set of tools, but its real value and power comes from those who use it. While it does have some inherent value, a lot of that value is unlocked by its application.
And how long? I mean, I don't have your LinkedIn profile in front of me, but how long ago did that journey start? When were you working in New York? What year?
Yeah, so that was back in right after I graduated from law school, so 2006 to 2007. That was a long year. It was not easy to work in New York as my first job out of college because that transition was a bit steep and rough. But it definitely was really interesting to me. And then I went to law school right after that in 2007. Graduated from law school in 2010. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. And looking back, technology is, as I had anticipated in some ways I hadn't anticipated, has really come a long way from that period of time.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that gives us a nice frame in terms of the years. I mean, yeah, I can remember 2007 very well, but frighteningly, that's quite quite a long time ago now. The or the olden days, as my daughter calls it, which is quite frightening. But the okay, so yeah, I mean, I like the term human centric, and I think that's something that we can certainly touch on in this interview. It's and I know that you know the legal tech market, obviously, and we've just talked off camera about the impact and the growth across Africa. But it's that practical application of the technology to improve the processes and improve the lives of those that are using it, and ultimately improve what's delivered to the client. That I certainly want to get into. And then when did you leaving law school? Just so again for context sake, did you work and live in New York for a little bit longer, or did you then move back to Boston, or how did that work?
Yeah, so after that year in New York, I um, moved back to the Boston area. Went to law school in the Boston area. Was a lot happier being out of New York. Only because New York is, I think, a I've always thought New York as being a fun place to visit, but to live in New York is challenging, particularly when you don't know anyone. I mean, now it'd be a little bit easier because I know a lot of folks who live in New York, but back then I didn't, so it was a fairly um, lonely experience for me. Um, but yeah, I came back to Massachusetts, went to law school, and then began work. Um, in the Boston area. So I've always kind of been around the Northeast for the most part, other than that time in New York. And then I did live in London actually for a year, my
My
junior
hometown.
year in college, studying at the London School of Economics, which was a lot of fun and probably one of the best years of my life because it was just so much fun. I met a lot of friends. London is a really fun place to live and be in. And for a big city, I found it very accessible and easy to navigate and not that difficult a place to kind of adjust to. So yeah.
Ah, that's I didn't know that. That's interesting. Like I said, my hometown, and it's nice for you. Thanks for saying such nice things. I'm going back there in about 3 weeks' time, so I'm looking forward to it. But no, I know what you mean about New York. I've got friends who've lived there for quite some time. Friends from South Africa who lived there for about a decade and have just moved back. And in fact, we had lunch with them the other day, and they were saying very similar things to you. What a lonely place it can be because it's so, I think they use the term powerful, such a big, powerful city. And if you don't know anyone, it's very hard to get in and get on. And a lot of people there don't need new friends. So it's very hard to get to know people. But so yeah, but I think that happens with a lot of the lawyers that we speak to as well. Obviously I've been lucky enough to move a lot of people around the world. And I think starting again, wherever you go, is you start again, right? And it's tough. So sometimes it's nice to go back. Okay, right. Now, in terms of before we get into your book and everything that you're working on at the moment, you're one of the we sort of mention it, and it's a question that we ask quite often. But you're sort of painting a picture here about your family's from Boston, right, or Massachusetts, right? So you've
Correct.
kind of moved home, which is so. In terms of your family and their sort of your move away from traditional law, if I may call it, into more legal tech. Is that something that they were interested in? Is it something they've been supportive of? Your family and your friend group, I suppose.
Yeah, a lot of my friends are in legal tech, but I have some friends who aren't, and they've all been very supportive. My family's been very supportive. I'm not sure that everyone who is not in legal tech fully understands exactly what it is or what I do, but they're supportive of it nevertheless, and interested in it. And certainly now more so after the publication of my book. But yeah, no, they've been very supportive and very encouraging of um, me kind of following my passion, my interest, and that's something that I also have been very supportive and encouraging of, and my friends as well as them to just find their happiness personally and professionally.
Yeah, it's good to hear, and it's a pertinent question to many legal professionals across Africa that I speak to, and we speak to, my team and I, on a weekly basis. Who, certainly in some of the more, should we say, conservative countries where if you're in the law, you follow a traditional law path, and then those that are then looking to branch out into something more technical or technology based, they often face quite a lot of problems. And we have been asked on a number of occasions, how do I explain my move to to my dad or to my mum, or how it may be. I guess you probably perfected your elevator pitch at one point that you that you had of what you do and where you were doing it. Okay, your book has just been released. Well, fairly recently, right? A few weeks
Yeah, a
ago,
few
was
weeks
it?
ago.
A few. And I'm. May I ask, how long did it take you to write? How is it your musings from over the year? I haven't seen a copy, sadly, but I'm not sure it's available here yet. But we don't have Amazon yet. If it's on Amazon, we have Amazon coming next year. Um, but how long did it take you to put together?
Got it. Well, I certainly look forward to Amazon being available over there. In the meantime, I will do whatever I can to ensure that those who want it in Africa have access to it. The book itself was approximately a 3 year long project, and it really kind of arose from a few things. One, I like to write. Writing for me is therapeutic, so that was one element of it. Another was I'd always wanted to write a book. I just know exactly when or how or what it would be about. But always was a dream of mine. And then three, um, I started to kind of write different longer pieces about legal tech and parts of legal tech, and figured, these could perhaps form the basis for a book alongside some quotations from interviews I'd conducted over the years with various legal leaders. Um, and so as I started working more on it, I realized, yeah, this possibly could turn into a book. And then thankfully, I found an editor slash publisher who was very happy to help me and kind of make sense of my mess of documents and thoughts. And yeah, I worked on it and finally got it out there. And I've been really happy to have accomplished it, and also been really happy that it's been, I think, helpful to others and been well received. So, yeah, it's been a really fun project. I'm really happy to have accomplished it. And it definitely was a lot more work and took way longer than I thought it was going to be. But that usually doesn't stop me from doing things, because I generally kind of am one who's willing to kind of take a risk, at least professionally in some ways, and see what happens.
Oh, man after my own heart. Yes. Yeah, I like what you said there about the publisher helping you pull together your mess or matter of notes, and pulling all your thoughts together, and and pulling it all into uh, into one book. I guess the in terms of people on the African continent getting access to it, they can buy it from your website, which is the link will be below. But obviously, I guess it has to be it have to be shipped from the US. I guess. Yes, I think Amazon is making a big push for Africa next year, including launching here. and I guess in other countries as well. So if it doesn't get here to this continent this year, we're in November already, so it'll be next year anyway. So if you see a spike in sales at some point, maybe you'll know where it's coming from. But in terms of the book, I mean, obviously, this is the 3 years of your thoughts and your interviews and and you're in the industry. But was there anything in there that was a bit of a revelation? Is there anything that you've looked at that you think that people on the African or legal professionals on the African continent should be aware of? Is there anything that really stands out for you that
I think that the one thing that
that's a
stands out for
highlight for you?
me, at least in terms of the book, is the fact that technology is just one part of the legal tech puzzle, if you will. It's really, as the title implies, it's really part of a larger ecosystem of people, of businesses, of processes, all working together and collaborating and sort of benefiting from one another. So I think that it's important to recognize the relationships that exist between all of these different things, and understand that technology, certainly is a big part of legal tech. I mean, it's in the title of the space and what have you, but it's really just one element. And that's one thing that I try to kind of make clear in the book, is the relationship between all the different elements of it and how they all kind of benefit and impact one another.
Look, I would, yeah, I'm going to get myself a copy because I find it all fascinating. We are talking about the legal tech impact across Africa, pretty much on a daily basis. I would say there's a conversation being had with a legal professional, at least one conversation per day in my sphere, and I know in my colleagues as well. And it's something that and I'm sure we may be a few steps behind where you are in the US and other nations, but we're still looking here. There's still a number of traditional law firms and legal teams that are looking at how to move away from the billable hour, and obviously with that mindset, then there's a reluctance to bringing in better, faster processes. I guess I'm going to guess that maybe that's not something that with your clients or with people in the industry or on the practice side of the industry. Is that something that in the US things that we're moving past that, or is that still a challenge to get past or get through?
I think that there are always challenges. I think, and certainly, I think here in the U.S., there are, while different continents and countries may be further ahead or behind or what have you. I think that there is, um, still a level of, in some sectors and with some people, a level of discomfort with the pace at which things are changing and or with technology in general. And I think that, at least the way I try to help folks overcome that kind of challenge or perspective, is that it's not about you necessarily having to become something you don't want to become. It's more a matter of understanding how you can work better and help others better using tools that you have available and perhaps some ones you don't have available but should look at. Because I think ultimately it comes down to really just understanding kind of how best you can work and how best others can be helped. And that starts with knowing yourself and knowing a lot about those you're trying to help.
Yeah, and again, that brings me on quite nicely to in your dare I say it, in your day job, the the company that you're working with. Um, are they providing solutions to in-house and to practice, or what are is that the field, the space that you're in?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying in terms of your day job, in terms of what you're working at Malbec, what services are they providing? Are they providing services to uh, legal tech solutions and process improvement to practice as well as in-house? Where are you sitting with that?
Sure. So our primary focus is on legal departments, larger legal departments, to help them with their contracting needs through the use of our solutions that enable more automated, data-driven contracting and better management of their contract documents and so on. So that's kind of really our goal and purpose, and we do that through artificial intelligence and through a seamless solution that allows for close, tight integration with other tools that these legal departments rely on. And really, what we're trying to do ultimately is help these legal departments be more value focused, more of a value add to their businesses, and more data driven.
Yeah, that's interesting. And because I speak to a lot of in-house counsel here on the continent, and actually we're bringing the General Counsel Summit to Africa for the first time ever to these shores next February. So I've been talking to a lot of in-house counsel, and in many situations, in many businesses across the African continent, they in-house tends to be um, the first early adopters of some of the new technology and process improvement that comes out. Um, um, where they're looking to improve and fast, and like you've just said there, be more of a value add to the business that they're in and to the exco or mancom, whoever that they're supporting. Is that something that you see in the US as well? Is it are in-house legal departments more inclined to look at for technology solutions, would you say, or is it just 50-50?
Yeah, I think that legal departments here in the U.S. in general are, particularly larger ones, are exploring ways to use technology to help them be more of a value add, be more business centric, and so on. Um, as to the question of whether legal departments versus law firms, who is more innovative and tech savvy, I think it's a stereotype to think that legal departments are often more tech savvy and or innovative. Would I say that they tend to be more? Not always. It really kind of depends on who's leading the legal department, because often for some legal departments, particularly larger ones, those are led by former law firm folks who bring with them the law firm mentality, which is a little less um, open to change. So it's not always the case that legal departments tend to be more innovative or tech savvy. I do think that it's been thought of that way because legal departments are closer to the business and therefore have to kind of have a greater incentive and more pressure to keep up and adapt as opposed to law firms.
Okay, yeah, no, it was just interesting to see whether there was a different view overseas, as it were. But yeah, here certainly from what I'm told, there's a drive, sometimes from a process improvement side of things, but also from a cost-driven side of things in respect of spending less money on external counsel and that kind of thing, rather than just hiring another lawyer. But that is yeah, that's interesting to see that there's no real difference. I suppose it's down to the individual and down to the business itself of whether what are they looking for, and whether the tech can improve it. Um, I wonder whether you have any views on this. We talk a lot to, well, obviously from lawyers from all backgrounds and in all countries across Africa. And one of the things that I often say to people is certainly those maybe the slightly older generation and the younger generation as well, some of those that are coming into the profession, they often say, there's a concern about legal tech sometimes, and that, and obviously the wonderful book and author Richard Susskind, who wrote the End of Lawyers, isn't the title of which wasn't helping anybody's anxiety very much, but but a great book no less. The I just what I often say to them is, this is your industry, right? So this is you decide. You get to decide what technology you use, how you want to help improve your output as a professional, as a lawyer, or to your clients. And not to forget that. Is that something? I just wonder whether actually that's something when you're talking to people in the industry, whether that is something that's sometimes lost. Is that it's up to them to direct it.
Yeah, I think that thinking more broadly about sort of the theme underlying that question, I think that there is definitely a lot of emphasis that needs to be put on managing change and managing humans' expectations and resistance to change, because I think historically we've all been to some degree resistant to it because our ancestors, were kind of always in survival mode. So once they found one way to survive, they didn't think about some alternative, because why not? If this is working, why change? And I think that mentality still is fairly pervasive. And I certainly think that it doesn't help that certain technologies, like some purveyors of generative AI solutions and what have you, are not exactly fully transparent with the respect to use of their data. And so that provides some areas, I think, of concern and resistance to technology. And certainly, I think we being those in legal tech and those in tech in general, need to be more honest and collaborative with respect to our development of these tools and with respect to our use and reliance on data sets.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That is a point that probably hadn't considered, but it's one that there will be. I mean, I don't need to tell you this because you're a legal professional, but sweeping statement, but generally legal professionals are sometimes risk averse. So the idea of going into something where it's not totally transparent, or it looks good on the surface, but how did you get there? Will there'll be a few brick walls, and I guess so. I suppose as this field of AGI certainly develops, the more transparency that there is, the more the less walls there'll be put up by major law firms and those at smaller firms as well. I just wonder, obviously you're deep into the legal tech space, and written a book about the space, and you're in it. You're one of the leading voices in it. Do you see? What do you think what's coming around the corner? Is there what is the this is such an open question, so apologies for it, but what do you think the future holds for the business of law?
I think I get asked this question fairly often, actually, and I think that the answer, um, well, at least the answer I would give, is that data is going to continue to be a huge theme and driver of future development of technologies and of change within the legal industry, in terms of reliance on it, in terms of use of it, in terms of analysis of it, and so on. And I think we've seen that we've seen emphasis been put on that as a result of the rise of generative artificial intelligence, which allows for fairly easy, straightforward interaction with artificial intelligence tools, but also they're essentially living, breathing on data sets, and on data. And so I do think that that is prompting those in law and elsewhere to see data as really an essential element of current and future tech development and use of tech solutions. And so that is in turn, I think, making folks be a little more data driven and analytical in use of data. And that, I think, has been the case with prior tech, but is, I think, being more and more emphasized as a result of the rise of these artificial intelligence based solutions.
Yeah, and I think the other question I had for you as well is that I've been lucky enough to work all over the world with law firms and legal departments of all shapes and sizes, but um, especially with US law firms, which are the top, certainly probably by revenue, the top 17 of the top 20 law firms in the world. Many of them are really embracing AI, right, and AGI, and developing their own tools. Again, we mentioned it at the beginning because you featured yourself in Above the Law, and for anybody, and we'll put the link below to the website. Because it's one I read and one I keep up to date with as well, because I'm always interested in what's happening in that space. Do you think that's something that a lot more of the law firms are going to continue to develop their own software, for a common term, or solutions? Do you think that's something that's going to continue?
Yeah, I think actually that I was talking about this the other day. I think that, the future of legal work and the future of what law firms and some in legal departments as well will be less than sort of the tactical day to day sort of work that is traditionally defined what it means to be a lawyer, and more on actually developing solutions, creating products in collaboration with clients. Because artificial intelligence and other tools will assist with sort of that day-to-day tactical stuff that you know people won't necessarily need to be handling as much, and that leaves more room for the creation of new products and solutions. And I think that's exciting. Actually, I think it marks a new way of thinking about what it means to be a legal professional or a lawyer, and what it means to be delivering legal services. And I think we've seen some initial signs of that with many law firms having their LegalTech subsidiaries work with clients in developing solutions. And that I think is going to continue and become even more prominent as time goes on.
I think you're right as well. I think you know, it's certainly the way that you phrased it there as well. It conjures up in my head of what lawyers in practice have probably been crying out for years, is that they get to be more proactive rather than reactive. They get to really sit with the client and develop solutions that will protect the business, or deliver whatever service it is. And the day-to-day stuff will be done, AGI, yeah, I think that could be really good. In fact, there's a lawyer here in Cape Town that I know quite well, and apologies to the listeners because I've mentioned her a couple of times, but she said to me, she's gone all in on legal tech and for her practice. And I said to her on the phone, I said, well, why have you done that? What's driving that? And she said, look, Rob, I didn't go to law school to just fill in templates and change the name of the company at the top and be reactive to some litigation need or whatever it is. I went to law school to be an advisor, to help the businesses that I work with, and if technology can help us develop that solution better, then that I'm going to be all over it. And I thought that was a nice way of thinking, and the way that it shows that is, and it sort of ties in with what you're saying there, which is very much the future of law is going to be very proactive solutions. But and yeah, it's good to see. I wonder if it will get to the bigger firms here. Certainly, we'll start with the bigger law firms, obviously, because they've got bigger budgets, obviously, and then maybe filter down into everyday use. And so that's obviously the business of law. It's adapting, it's evolving, it's embracing technology. Some will say finally some of the law firms and legal departments are actually embracing it. But what about you? What's on the plans for Colin? What's the future, or the near future, holding for you, professionally, personally? Obviously, it's getting cold up in Boston now. Yeah?
It is.
Time to get
It
the
it
winter
actually
coat out.
unexpectedly snowing today, which I'm excited about. I'm a big fan of winter. For me, I think that it's continuing to write and speak and learn and help others with respect to legal tech. And you know, in the very short term and medium term, continue to talk about my book and other efforts, and do my good work with Malbec. And I'm excited to see how things evolve, and I'm excited to continue to help grow and support the legal tech community overall.
Well, that's going to speak to a lot of people here. I mean, off camera, I tried to sort of give you an idea of what's happening on the continent here, but we've legal tech is really taking a hold here. The African nations, the bigger nations in terms of where the bigger legal markets are, your Kenyas and Nigerias and South Africa, Uganda, Ghana, Egypt, Morocco. We're seeing so much emphasis and focus on tech, and I think that we discussed it off air, but there's a lot going on here that maybe not a lot of people are aware of. We have legal tech expos in this year. There was one in Uganda, there was one in South Africa, and there was one in Kenya. So they'll probably happen again next year. So it's growing and growing and growing, and but it's really great to see what you're doing, and I implore everybody to follow you on LinkedIn and Twitter, and certainly visit the website, which is going to be in bold and in caps down below, to see if they can buy your book, and if not, we'll be making sure that it's promoted across the continent when Amazon finally opens its doors here. But look, I really wanted to thank you for your time, Colin. I've been really looking forward to speaking to you for a very long time. It's a real honor and a pleasure to have such a leading voice in the legal tech space on our podcast, talking to our audience, which is across Africa. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us. Well, this morning in your part of the world, and this afternoon in mine. But thanks very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and really am just so excited to have had to speak to your audience about my favorite subject, and look forward to connecting with anyone who's interested, who listens to this, whether on LinkedIn or on Twitter/X or wherever. So yeah, it's just been a pleasure, and thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm your host, Rob Green, and you've landed on the Legal Unicorns podcast page. Chances are you're in the legal industry, and chances are that you have an interest in the African continent. If you do, please like and subscribe and watch all the videos underneath my face.